valid or invalid. So we used the options are displaying messages, hiding the messages. So based on valid, invalid, that is all class binding. Now the next important another is the ng style. So ng style is nothing but technically ng style. It is used to apply inline style dynamically for any element. You know that, for example, actually you know that styles can be defined inline, styles can be defined embedded, styles can be defined in external file. So there are various techniques of configuring the styles: inline, embedded, external file. Inline means generally styles are defined inside the element by using a style attribute. Actually we use style attribute. So embedded means in the style tag we define some set of styles and we access and use them. External means styles are present in separate file, .css file, and you know the difference between them. So what is problem with external files? If styles are coming from an external file, so then the problem is, that means currently styles are coming from a CSS file. The problem if the styles are coming from an external file is number of requests for a component will increase. That means the TS file should come, the HTML file should come, and the CSS. And if number of requests are increased, then obviously the page load time also will increase. Component load time also increases. So we can avoid that. So by using the styles inline, that means the styles inline advantage is they can be configured for any specific element without maintaining a separate file. Now the point is they are faster because they are local to that particular element, and dynamically we need to change the style. So how do we change the style dynamically to any element is the key point here. So for that, Angular provides the option ng style. So generally inline styles means how we write. By using style we define the attribute and we use value. Multiple are separated with attribute and value like this. That is the general technique of applying inline style. Now ng style is used to define the styles dynamically. What we do is we use ng style, and by using ng style, so we can apply any set of effects. So set of effects, it is expecting a style object. Actually it is expecting a style object. Style object contains set of effects, and those effects can change dynamically. These can change dynamically. The intention of using ng style is to apply the styles that change dynamically. So, and they will be native for that particular element. So generally how you apply the inline styles, the same way, only the point is the values comes dynamically and they can change the appearance of that element dynamically. let's see how it is possible, how we can manage that. Actually, I will create a simple component to show you the basic example for that. So let's take a new file, a new terminal, and open this components location in the terminal. Okay, let's generate a component, and the generate component style demo. Okay, so let's add that style demo into the startup style demo. So that is in the startup. Okay, and bootstrap with this style demo. Okay, so style demo is one component we created, and it is working fine here. That is style demo working, right? Now, how this works, first basic example I will show you. For example, let's go to the style demo TS file. In the TS file, so we are creating a simple object. So we are creating a simple object which contains set of effects. That means, so I created a style object. Okay. Style object comprises of set of effects. It's a JavaScript object. So the effects I am giving as, suppose, some background color, and the value is some red. Okay, so I said some color, and that is white. Okay, so then text align. So I defined some center. Okay, these are some set of attributes and values defined in a JSON JavaScript object. Okay, now we need to apply this to any particular element. So let's go here and define a simple div, and class, so container fluid, and here for heading, this is heading, so style binding. Okay, to this heading we are defining the effects. We want to apply the effects for that. Then we are using ng style. Ng style is an attribute. Through that attribute we are applying. So the style object, so we are accessing the style object and configuring. So the style object is applied. The style object is applied to that heading. The style object contains some set of styles. You can see that it is an object of that style component, and it shows these effects. And you can see here those effects are applied to that particular element. So the point is, this object can dynamically change its values. So the values, that means you can dynamically change the appearance according to the situation, according to the state, that it can change its appearance dynamically. So how it can change the appearance dynamically? For example, what we can do here is, suppose these values, the red, white, and the center like options, we can change dynamically. So we can configure them dynamically. So you can define them dynamically. That means you can configure them dynamically means, for example, this style object can get the values from any element. so that you can apply them and you can configure them. So for example, how you can manage that. Let's see. Suppose let's design this. This is a style object. We want to change these values dynamically. So we can do that. So just we can design a screen from where we can access that and we can handle that. So let's create a simple presentation here. So I will create a div and a class as row. Okay, and here I am creating the class as call3 something. Okay, and here let's keep a heading. So here say choose effects, and here we are defining a simple div. So class as form group, and in that label we said some background color, and user can choose a background color so that can come from any specific location. We can ask the user to type color picker. We can use a color picker here. So for example, I'm using input type is equal to color. Input type is equal to color. And how we can get that and use the value of that particular color picker, we can see that. So let's see here. This is the color picker. This is the background color. And we have a color picker here, background color. We are defining a color picker. So let's keep this here. So for example, put this in a separate div, and this is for background color. We need to collect the value of this and we can define. Let's see that, right? Another, I will use the option as form group, and here the label is forecolor. So that is the foreground color. So, and I just give a div here, and input type is equal to color. So that's also we defined as color. So that is color. Class, so we can apply as form control. So the class applied as form control. This is also the class as a form control. The form control class is applied for that. You can see this is, we have a background color and foreground color. Okay. And for example, for alignments, I'm using some options here. So div and class as a form group, and here label say alignment. And for alignment, I'm just using simple options. So input type is equal to some radio. Yeah, we will use radio, or we can use a drop down radio, anything. I will put here as a select, and a class form control. Okay, and here we have options. So these options will define the value like so left, so the option like center, and option like right. Okay, these are the alignment related options configured here. You can see left side we have alignment. Okay, let's keep another div here, and so it's a form group. So class form group, and here we are applying some effect. So button, and button will have the class as btn and btn primary and btn block. Okay, this is like apply effects. That's it. Now this is the panel that we have for background color, for foreground color, and for alignment. Now we need to collect these values and apply those values to the text, to the heading. So defined here, suppose we are adding a div and we have a heading, and the heading is some sample text. To this sample text, we need to apply so some effects. So I'm just giving some style. So margin top as some 200 pixels, something like this. And that is the heading text here we are having. Yeah. So here we are configuring just let's keep the margin all sides equal. Okay, so 50 pixels I am defining. So that is the sample text. Okay. Now when I am selecting the colors, so the background color, foreground color, the alignments, these values must be applied to this text dynamically. And important, I want to apply the effects without using any external classes. We don't want to bring effects from any class. So if we are bringing the effects from any CSS classes from a CSS file, then the number of requests for the CSS file will increase. Means number of requests for component will increase. We don't want the CSS file to have. We want the effects directly to apply to that element without the CSS file, without the effects from CSS file. Then previously we learned class binding, where we were maintaining all the classes in a separate location and we are using them. But now we can simply handle this situation. So by using one technique, first we need to collect all the values from these controls. That means BG color, text box, foreground color, text box, all these we need to collect. So all these options we need to collect. So we are declaring some properties here. One is BG color. So BG color is coming from a background color, some BG color. So BG color is coming from some code. Because we used a color picker will get the color code. So BG color code, I am just giving BG color code is empty. Currently, no code is defined. You know that color can define from hexadecimal code. Actually, we used a color picker and color picker will get the hexadecimal codes actually. So BG color code, okay. And foreground color code, this is also initially empty. And align, I keep this as left is the default alignment value, align equal to left. So these are the properties we are having. So BG color code and foreground color code and align, these properties should get values from these controls. Then we need to bind them to those controls. So it's simple here. For the first input type, so that is a background color, we are binding ng model. We are binding the value. So the value, that means, so whatever the color code it gets, it should be accessed and used here. So we will store that in BG color code. That means whatever value comes from there, it will be stored in background color code, BG color code. Okay. That is through two-way binding technique we are accessing and displaying it. Okay. Next, important. So the foreground should be applied. So ng model. So FG color code. That is the foreground color code. And the drop down value we have to collect by using ng model. So this is align. So that means these properties are updated with the values. But usually they need to be updated with the values when I click on apply button. Directly they can update the values. We want to do that when they click apply button. We want to configure when they click apply button. Then usually what we can do is we can configure the effects, and we can define the effects for a method apply click. Apply click. On apply click, what we need to do is, so this style object is having some colors, effects. Those effects initially we will keep empty. We will keep those effects empty. We will keep the effects empty. Initially these effects values are empty. By default you can give some alignment for that. So currently it is empty. Style object is empty, and this style object we need to apply to this heading. So to the heading we are applying ng style. Through ng style we are applying style object, but style object is not having any effects. Currently it is empty. So what we do now, when apply button is clicked, we have to collect these BG code, FG code and align and apply to this style object. So what we have to do is, this dot style object should update its effects. What are the effects it needs to update? First, BG background color. Okay, what value? Value will come from BG color code. It will come from BG color code, which is accessing the value from the color box. So dynamically we are defining it. Another one is color. Color will get the value from this dot FG color code. It will get the value from that control. Another one, text align. Text align will come from, so this dot align. So the style object will be updated on apply click, and apply click should fire up when user clicks that apply button. That means on the click we have to access that apply click and define it. Now when I run this here, you can see I am choosing the color here, some background color. So some background color, we are choosing a background color. Okay, that is the background color. And the foreground color, so the foreground color is chosen. And text alignment, we'll selected this to the center, and apply effects, that should apply the effect. Of course, so this alignment need to be handled for that particular content. So based on, so you selected left or center or right, so it should be affected when the width is adjusted for that. That means we need to configure the width for that because it is kept in a column, and in that case, so the width for that column should be defined. This heading is to be kept in a column. So then we will just keep this in a div. Yeah, because we are separating into columns, and here we are using class as call sum9. Yeah, it is kept in a separate column there, right? Yes. I am selecting here alignment to center, and background color some color, and foreground color some color, and apply the effect. Those effects will be applied to that particular text. So we are dynamically changing the effect. We are dynamically changing the effect. And this time the effects are not returned from a style object and applying those effects dynamically. So according to the state and the situation, these colors will be changing. According to the state and situation, these colors will be changing. This effect will be changing. That means we are using an style binding technique. So style binding technique is mostly used when we want the effects to any specific element, applied to any specific element. And we are not concerned about reusability of those effects. That means if you want some effects to be used across several elements, then we need a reusability of the effects. Then we maintain the effects in a separate CSS file. But we don't want to reuse the effects. We just want to apply the effects to a specific element, but dynamically change those effects according to the situation. So if reusability concerned, then ng style is not great. Why? Because ng style will define some set of effects which are native to that particular element. If you want to access the styles across several elements and use them, then the best option is class binding. So for any specific element natively you want to maintain some effects, then we have to go with this style binding technique. So, and both are dynamically changing, both are dynamically applying the effects. There are several techniques actually. So here what we are doing is we are creating a style object, and this style object is applied to the heading. But sometimes you see people, they directly use a function that returns those effects. That means, for example, actually there is different techniques are there. It depends on the requirement and specification. Actually some developers, how they do is, so apply click is accessing this effects, and through this style object what they do is they simply return this dot style object. That means now style object contains the latest effects, whatever effects you have defined, and those effects are returned by this function. That means a function is returning some effects. And this function is returning some effects, and that function they generally use in style binding. That means they use apply click function. So apply click is a function that fires up when button is clicked, and that function is returning some object, and that return value is applied to this ng style. So it is applied to that ng style. So that's how it is configured. So concept is same, anything is same, both are similar, so no change. That means I selected some background color. You can see the background color is applied. But what is the specialty now here is, while you are selecting, those effects are applied here. It will not wait until you click that button. So that means apply effects button. Why? Because you are directly returning them. That means this apply click will fire up. Every time whenever a change occurred in the elements. So whenever the value change occurred inside the elements, it is going to handle it. This is actually why this technique is used, because they want those effects to apply immediately. They don't want to wait until apply effects button is clicked. So actually it should work on apply effects. It should work immediately. It depends on situation. So generally, if I have to collect the value, you know that we have to use 3 events. That is on change of first background color, collect its value. On change of foreground color, collect its value. On change of drop down, we have to collect the value. But now we don't need to do that. Whenever any value changes here, automatically this changed value is updated into this style object, and that style object is returned, and that return function so is applied directly here. So that means the return value is applied here. So there are 2 situations. You want to wait until the apply button is clicked. Then what you do is you apply the style object here. You apply the style object here. When you apply the style object there, when I apply the style object there, I am selecting some colors. It is not updated there. I am selecting effects. It will wait until I click apply effects button. But if I am applying that function, apply click function, then it will apply the effects dynamically. While choosing, you can see those effects are working here. So while choosing that, it will apply those effects and it will define those effects here. So this is generally how we bind styles. Two techniques are there. So we can create a function. We can create a function that returns that style object, and you can apply the function. When you apply the function, it will update the value immediately whenever the value changed in the bound element actually. So whatever the bound elements are there, so data bound elements are there, any value change, it will update and it will automatically reflect into this function. And it is returning that object immediately. Due to this, what happens is, so that the those styles are applied whenever the value is changed. So you can do that because you see several times people using a function. If anybody using a function as a return, that means his intention is to apply the effects immediately on change of value. So if anyone is using a style object, then intention is that wait until all the effects are applied. It depends on situation how you want to manage and configure them. That is two techniques of this, how we can configure and use. One example on that. Right. So this is style binding. This is style binding. Through ng style, you can apply the styles. I will show you another example, just how this style binding can work, configured. That means we want the styles to be configured dynamically to an element, and that is native to that particular element. When we are not concerned about the reusability of the styles, then this will be the best option for defining the styles dynamically. That means I don't want for several elements the same thing to happen. Only for one specific element I want this. Then there is no point of maintaining separate CSS file and writing all these styles in that CSS file, bringing them and applying to that element. So we need only for one element, then better use inline styles, style binding. Let's see another example how we can manage that. For suppose, see, I'm going to this assets. In the assets folder, let's copy one image here. Suppose in my computer, I have some images. Yeah, so some images. Let's copy that image here. So I have some flag. So this is an image here. Okay, fine. It's a GIF file. So I have a small image that is a GIF file. Okay, and let's add one component again here. So ng generate component style binding. Okay, so another one, script s. Okay, let's keep this style binding in the startup. And I'm creating another example here. Style binding. Fine. In the index, let's keep that style binding. Okay, let's see. Yeah, it's working. Now what we are doing here is in this style binding. So we are adding some effects. That means just let me keep one simple option here. So we created the effect like this. We created a div. So, and class container fluid. In this we have a div, and for this div I am defining the style height is equal to some 1000 pixels. Okay, under that we have an image, and the image source is coming from not dynamic, it is just static source. From assets we have flag.gif. Okay, so that is the image we are defining. And let's keep some height and width for this image. So width 50 and height 50. That is an image. Okay. Now here, what is the intention of this design actually? So the intention of design is very simple. What I've done is, so this is the page, and in the page I kept a div. In the page I kept a div, and this is the div. In the page we kept this div, and this div is height is 1000 pixels. Actually our page size will be maximum 700 pixels height. So width will be maximum 1200 pixels, 1200 pixels. But I kept a div inside it with 1000 pixels, with the 1000 pixels. That means obviously it will go outside the screen. And below that we kept an image here, image. That means whenever I load the page, so image is not displayed. Why? Because it is outside the screen. It is outside the screen, right? So it is bottom. At the bottom we kept that image and defined it. So now the point here is, when we are dealing with this image at the bottom, we will have a mouse pointer. So we have mouse pointer. And when I am moving the mouse pointer on the screen, while moving, I need to get the position of mouse pointer. So how you can do that? So that means this requires an event called so mouse move is an event. You know that JavaScript events, we have a mouse move event. Mouse move event will indicate the actions to perform. It will indicate the actions to perform when the mouse pointer is moving. When the mouse pointer is moving. When it is moving through the event arguments, we will collect its client X. Client X will get the X-axis position, and the client Y will get the Y-axis position through event. And you know that, so the event related properties in Angular are sent by using a $event, $event. Through that we can access the position, X-axis, Y-axis position of that particular element. And what we do is, this position we will apply to this image. That position is applied to that image. That means the image position is depending on, that means it is dependent on the mouse position. That means when you change the position of mouse, image position also should be same. That means image should be at the position of mouse. That means its position should be near the mouse. When mouse is moving, then the image also should move along with the mouse. Along with the mouse. That is the intention here. Initially it is at the bottom, and it changes its position immediately once you start moving the mouse pointer. Once you start moving the mouse pointer, its position is captured and it is applied to the image. That means I will create now a simple style object here. I will create a style object here. Let's create a style object and configure that here. I am creating a simple style object here. So style object. Okay. This style object contains some properties like Position. Position is, CSS positions. We have sticky position, relative position. We will give the position as fixed. Position as fixed. Fixed position means the element is removed from the DOM hierarchy. It is removed from the DOM. That means DOM order. It is removed from the DOM order, but it is present inside the page. And it is removed from the DOM, and it should be kept at one location. So we need two locations. One is the top, and so here we have to define top. Top position is not yet decided. We will change it. And the left position, these two positions we have to change. That means position fixed top and left. Actually, top and left is nothing but the image position. That means the image that we have at the bottom. You can see this is the image at the bottom. So top position must be, the image top position must be, top position must be the y-axis, and the left position must be the x-axis. Left position must be x-axis. That means image top position must be y-axis position, and image left position should be x-axis position. That means the mouse x-axis will be applied to image left, and the mouse y-axis will be applied to image top. That is the point. Okay. So now what we will do here is, this top and left positions are empty currently. Okay. When user is moving the mouse, that means we will write an event on mouse move is a function. On mouse move function will fire up when user is moving the mouse on this container, when moving the mouse on the container. So here we will write an event that is mouse move. These are all general JavaScript events only. So when mouse moves, what should happen? It should call the function on mouse move. And how the function gets the position of the mouse? So we will pass the event arguments, $event. It will send the event related properties to this particular function. We will collect those event related properties here. And here we will update the position of style object. This dot style object, position will be same. Position we will define as fixed. It is same, no change. And the top position should depend on the y-axis of the mouse. How to get the y-axis position of the mouse? Through the event object, we can get client y. It gets the y-axis position. It will get the y-axis position of the mouse. And it is in pixels, So you have to add plus. So because it is a string, you have to add pixels. That means y-axis position, it will get 100 pixels. You have to tell that pixels. And similarly, left position is event dot client x plus pixels. So the position is updated automatically. That means the style object, the position is updated. So, and the values will come from the mouse axis. That means when you are moving the mouse, it will get the latest position of the mouse, and it will apply that position to this style object. This style object is having a position of mouse, which we need to apply to this particular image. To this image, we need to apply that style object. Then simply we just use ng style, and we will apply that style object here. That means the position of the image will depend on the mouse move. When you are moving the mouse, the latest position of the mouse is collected, and that position is updated into this style object, and that style object is being used by the image. Now you can see here, when I move the mouse pointer, you can see the image will move along with the mouse pointer. The image is moving along with the mouse pointer. That means the image position is changing. Image position is changing according to the mouse pointer position. According to the mouse pointer position, it is changing according to the position. So that means it is updated. Let's open the debugger here. You can inspect in the debugger. In the debugger, you can see here the position is changing. You can see the inline style is applied for that image. You can observe carefully the image IMG is applied with a inline style where position is fixed, and you can observe here position is fixed. Top and left, top is 241 and the left is 405. Observe carefully that positions will be changing when I am moving the mouse, and the style is applied only for that particular element, which is updating the positions automatically here, and it is not affecting anything else inside the page. It is just affecting only that particular image. Only that particular image. It is applying the effects, it is configuring the effects and displaying. So when you want any effect to be applied to any specific element, and it should change dynamically, so then the better option is to use style binding technique. So this improves the performance of the application, because generally when you bring the styles from external style sheet, when you bring the files from external style sheet, the number of requests for the page will increase and the page load time will increase, until or unless you don't need reusability across the requests, means across the elements. So not to use the class binding, better go with the style binding. That is inline style, how you configure inline style. These are just two different examples how to handle the style binding technique and work with the style binding technique, right? The next important now here is, once we know this, these are all attribute directives. So the model and class ng style. We will see how to use these in later stages while working with validations also, because mostly these are used in such interactions, and not only in interactions, they are used mostly in validations. So when you see in validations, you can understand that how the effects are applied dynamically to the element by using an inline technique. In validation also we will see that. Another important point is actually Angular provides predefined CSS class. Angular have its own classes which you can apply and use in validations. It has its own classes. So CSS classes, Angular has its own CSS classes, which you will see to use in validations. They are validation classes actually. You can simply say that predefined validation CSS classes. That means just like Bootstrap classes, Angular has its own validation classes. Through that we can handle easily validations, which you are going to learn. In validations we are going to understand and we are going to deal with that, right? So these are all the attribute directives. So now you have learned three important options. One is the component directive, another one is the attribute directive, another one structural directive. Means how do we use the directives. Now after understanding these directives, now we need to know about the events in Angular. That means This is a very simple option for anybody who knows JavaScript events. So I will just give you a simple example. So, and JavaScript events actually. All Angular events are same like JavaScript events. Few techniques you have to learn here. And that is enough. You can handle all the JavaScript events in the similar way. So what is event binding difference in Angular? How it is handled in Angular, we need to understand that. Then we can see how we can manage the components and component cycle. That means component cycle, transporting data from one component to another, nested components, multiple components, designing application with several components. All these will come now, how to handle that. So that we will see in our next session, right? So in tomorrow's session, we will discuss about event binding. What is event binding in Angular and how to deal with event binding. And once we are done with this event binding, now we can go into the options like component hierarchies, how to handle event binding is also important. JavaScript events are same, but in interviews, they regularly ask about custom events, which is very important concept. So in regular Angular interviews, you will face questions on these custom events. And here you will learn so many things which are asked in interviews regularly in Angular. So that's the reason. So this is a very important topic for interviews in Angular actually. So event binding, transporting data from one component to another, various techniques are there that we will see in our next session, right? Tomorrow we will continue with this, how event binding works in Angular. Huh?